Welcome to Fridays for Fundraising. In the next 5 minutes, you're going to learn one step you can take before you leave the office today that can move fundraising forward for your small nonprofit. Hi, I'm Kelly, founder of From Scratch Fundraising, where we help nonprofit leaders raise more dough without burning anything. Every Friday, I'm here to serve up one bite-sized fundraising assignment that you can finish in about an hour. Think of it as your weekly recipe for sustainable fundraising success. No overwhelm, just actionable steps that actually move the needle. This month, we are talking annual reports. On February 6th, I talked to you about different formats you might use for your annual report and how to choose the right one for your organization. On the 13th, I talked about how we can tell stories and what stories might be the most compelling to tell and how to think outside the box. Our donors don't just want to hear the stories about our clients. They like hearing about how our organization is growing and changing and how we're responding to those community needs. This week, let's talk a little bit about the data that your donors want to see in an annual report. Of course, when we think about the data of an annual report and reporting back to donors, we're always thinking about that financial transparency. Where did we spend our money last year? And I do think that is an important component of the annual report is where did our income come from and where were the expenses? What's the balance sheet looking like? And we don't have to post like half of our audited financial statements in our annual report. Again, I think that's kind of a thing of the past when donors couldn't, Google your organization name and 990 and find it instantly on the internet, right? So really just giving them a snapshot of where their money went. So you can go for the classic pie chart or even more meaningful impact metrics, like for every dollar we raised, this much went into our mission work. That type of thing can be really impactful. I also tend to tell people don't shy away from telling your donors that there is overhead. The overhead myth, I think, is really pervasive in our industry. And I think the more that we talk about the need to have qualified staff, the need to pay rent on our location so that we have a safe place for teenagers to gather, if that's our mission, making sure that our donors understand that overhead isn't fluff. It's not us eating chocolates and bonbons in our offices, right? Our overhead is paying expert people salaries that keep them in their jobs, that make bigger impact, that pay for our rent, that pay for the electricity bill, that helps us do our work. So please don't try to hide your overhead. I think the more we all talk about it, the less donors are going to worry about it. So that's just my hot take. I really do think it's important that we be transparent and that we share these statistics with our donors. But I also think it's incumbent upon all of us to help donors understand that overhead is not fluff. It is integral to accomplishing our mission. All right, stepping off of my soapbox and stepping back into data for your annual report. The data we want to share in our annual report should reflect the story that we're telling. If we are telling the story of growth in our organization, how our organization has expanded in the past few years, the data that we share should support that growth. Last year, we supported 4 after-school programs. This year, we're supporting 8 after-school programs, right? Showing that and marrying it to the story you're trying to tell about your organization's growth and development in the prior year. If we are telling a story about a client we've served, we want to give some impact metrics and some data on who are these clients that we've served, how many did we serve, in which ways, those types of things. If we're talking about some sort of capacity building that we did for our organization in the last year, can we show some impact metrics on how that supported our mission and our growth? So for example, if I'm telling the story about us making a big effort to hire more program staff, what were the program outcomes that would not have happened if we hadn't hired that staff? Again, I think we tend to shy away from sharing internal stories, but it's so important that our donors see absolutely everything that's going on with our nonprofit. And I think throughout the year, we're often sharing lots of impact stories. What did we do in the world? What change did we make? All of those types of stories. That the annual report is actually a really great opportunity to help show your organizational strength. This is actually something donors care a lot about. I'll tell you just a very quick story from an organization I worked for. I was asking a donor for a bequest, which is, putting money in their will for our organization, which is usually a big amount of money. And he said, well, I don't have any confidence that the organization will continue since, gosh, you only have one staff member. And I said, what are you talking about? We have 5 full-time staff and 10 part-time staff. And he went, what? I didn't know that. The last time I checked in, it was just the founder who was the executive director. And I realized that we really needed to talk to our donors about how big our staff had gotten. And that was not met with, gee, you must have a lot of overhead. That was met with, gee, this must be a much more sustainable and capable organization because you have such a big staff. You have so many smart people on your staff, right? And that was a story that really needed to be told, and our donors really loved hearing, and it made fundraising easier. So talk about capacity building. It's so important that we do that. And it's really important when we do that, that we tie the capacity build to mission outcomes. So how can you tell that story in your annual report? How can we share data that is meaningful? I was looking at a client's draft of their annual report recently, and there was a story page and then there was a data page, and they didn't go together. They weren't in conversation. So I was like, well, those are really nice numbers and that's a really nice story, but they're not telling me a cohesive story altogether. Can we do something that paints a narrative of how it all works together? And then the client brought me back a new draft, and wow, it was so much better. We were integrating the metrics into the story we were telling. If you are a nonprofit organization doing fundraising in the margins, in the moments between the mission work, I want to talk to you because I want to work with you this year to build a mission-centered fundraising program that helps you get it all done. I'm talking about you organizations with solo executive directors, you organizations with tiny staff. I want you to reach out to me. Go to fromscratchfundraising.com/schedule. I specialize in building fundraising strategies that are integrated into your reality, the resources that you have, the time that you have at the margins, and centering your mission so that we are deeply connecting your donor audience with your mission. Mission work is not separate from fundraising work. When we bring donors into our program work, we build those loyal, sustainable donors that keep our mission funded year after year after year. If this is what you're looking for, I want to work with you this year. Go to fromscratchfundraising.com/schedule, and I cannot wait to connect with you. So as you have picked your format and as you have decided what story you're going to tell, I want you to think about what data supports that narrative and shows how your organization is making the difference that you promised your donor. And that can be client stories. It can also be stories about how our organization is growing, developing, and changing. And I think our donors need to hear more of those stories. Your homework assignment this week is to put that all together. What's the format? What stories are you telling? and what data is going to support that storytelling. Make the donor feel, then make them think. Can you put that together this week as your homework assignment? Build one big cohesive picture for your donor with the stories and the data. And how does your format support that communication effort?
Now go make the world a better place.